Now, before husband and wife engage in foreplay, it is necessary that the husband and wife, they take time in preparing themselves for sexual intercourse and for sexual intimacy. And it is imperative and it is necessary that they try their best in beautifying themselves for each other. And this is something which is mentioned in the Holy Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing the Hura'in, the heavenly wives of paradise. He has used the word كَأَنَّهُنَّ الْيَاقُوتُ وَمَرْجَانُ, that verily these Hura'in, these heavenly wives, will be like rubies, will be like coral. Now, I'm just going to mention some guidelines or some things which a Muslim wife or a wife should adhere to before she gets intimate with her husband. Now, number one is that the wife should take time in beautifying herself, in adorning herself for her husband. Now, humans are naturally attracted to bright colors. If a person, say, for example, is walking down the street and he's wearing a bright colored clothing, he's wearing bright colored shirt or some bright colored trousers, then automatically a human gaze will go to that person. So similarly, at the time of intimacy or the time of foreplay, if the wife is wearing some nice clothing, some bright colored clothing to attract her husband, then that is something which is permissible and that is something which is allowed. And if the husband, say, for example, wants his wife to wear some kind of seductive, some kind of appealing clothing, such as, let's say, for example, if the husband wants his wife to wear some appealing and seductive lingerie or underwears or anything like that, then that is something which is permissible. And if the wife does it or wears those kind of clothing for the sake or for the sake of pleasing her husband, then inshallah she will be rewarded for that. And there are many Muslim sisters, they think that are wearing these kind of seductive and appealing lingerie or bras or underwear for my husband is against piety, is against modesty and so on. And that is incorrect. Because if they had worn this, or if they had worn bright colored clothing or some nice colored clothing or some nice clothing for another person, for someone who is haram for them, then they would be sinful for that. They will be getting a sin for that. However, when they are doing it for their husband, to please their husband, then they will get rewarding that. And we see many Muslim sisters and so on, that home they will wear the least expensive, they would wear the most unattractive clothing at home for their husband. But when they're going to a dinner party, when they're going to a wedding and so on, then they will wear the most expensive, the most beautiful, the most attractive clothing you could find. And if they are doing it to impress strange men so that strange men, again mahram, can look at them, then obviously that woman will be sinful for her actions. However, if she does it at home, she wears those kind of clothing to impress her husband, to please her husband, then inshallah she will get rewarded for that. So the first thing is that a woman, it's permissible for her to wear bright, attractive clothing, for her to wear seductive lingerie or underwear for her husband, then that is something which is permissible and that is something which is allowed in Islam. The second thing which a Muslim wife can do, or which she should do before engaging herself in foreplay with her husband, is that she removes unwanted hair from her, or from below her navel, from below her armpits, from her arms, from her legs and so on. And the reason why is because a hair or a hairy woman is, for a man, is considered as a turn-off. So therefore, as I mentioned before, that the wife, she should do things which pleases her husband, which attracts or increases the level of desire of the husband, then it will be preferable and it will be good that if she removes unwanted hair, and this will increase the level of desire the husband has for his wife when they are getting intimate and at the time of foreplay and when they are actually engaging themselves in sexual intercourse. And also, finally, it's also permissible and allowed for women to beautify themselves when they are engaging in foreplay, meaning that if the husband wants his wife to apply some makeup on the face or to apply lipsticks or nail polish and so on, or for example for the wife to comb her hair, for her to put some kind of nice scent or some kind of nice perfume on her body when the husband is getting intimate with her, when the husband is engaging in foreplay with her, and then after that when he is engaging in sexual intercourse with her, then as I said before, with regards to wearing seductive clothing and appealing clothing, if it is done with the intention of pleasing the husband, if it is done to impress the husband, then all these things will be allowed and all these things will be permissible. With just one masla with regards to perfume and scents and so on, and that is that one has to, or the Muslim sister has to remember that if the perfume or if the scent is such that which has been extracted from grapes, then for her to use those kind of perfumes, then that is impermissible and that is not allowed. Like many perfumes, they have alcohol inside. So if the alcohol has been extracted from grapes, which is also known as ethanol, then for her to use that would be impermissible to beautify herself. However, other perfumes or other scents like synthetic alcohol or some kind of chemical alcohol, then for the Muslim woman to use that to perfume herself before she gets intimate with her husband, then that is something which is allowed and that is something which is permissible. At the same time, the husband, he should also take care and he should also prepare himself physically for the foreplay and the sexual intercourse. Generally speaking, we the Muslim brothers, we just expect our wives to beautify themselves for us. However, we don't try our best to beautify ourselves for them. And this is something which is very important, because if a husband is not clean, if a husband doesn't look after himself, it may lead to his wife looking at unlawful men and engaging or having thoughts or having unlawful desires for unlawful men. And this can be substantiated from a hadith narrated by Sayyiduna Ali radiallahu anhu, which can be found in Kanzul Ummal, where the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ighsilu thiyabakum," that wash your clothes, wa khuzu min shu'urikum, and cut your hair, wastaku, and do miswak, wa tazayyanu, and adorn and beautify yourselves, wa tanzifu, and clean yourselves. فَإِنَّ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ لم يكونوا يفعلون كذلك فزنت نساؤهم. Because Banu Israel, i.e. the Jews, they didn't do these things. I.e. they never used to wash their clothes, they never used to cut their hair, they never used to clean their teeth and so on. كذلك فزنت نساؤهم. Then what happened? Hence their women committed adultery. So because the Jews, the men, they never used to look after themselves, what happened eventually was that their women, they started committing adultery with other men, they started having unlawful thoughts about other men, and that's where the destruction of Banu Israel started, when their women started committing adultery and zina and fornication with other men. So from this we can understand that husbands, they should also take care of their personal hygiene before they engage in foreplay or sexual intercourse with their wife. It is necessary that little things such as they brush their teeth, they comb their hair, any extra hair, surplus hair, such as below the armpits, below the navel, between the buttocks and so on. They remove it and then they engage themselves in foreplay. Now, going back to the issue of foreplay, it is a very important part of the actual sexual intercourse which the husband and wife are going to engage themselves in. And the husband, he should take time in arousing his wife through kissing, through massaging, through caressing, through fondling her body parts. And then when the wife is properly aroused, when her desire has reached the level, then, or only then, the husband should engage in sexual intercourse with his wife. It is mentioned in a hadith narrated by Sayyiduna Anas bin Malik anhu that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that none of you would come to his wife like an animal, meaning that a person, he should not have sexual intercourse with his wife like an animal does, meaning that straight away, without any foreplay, without any kisses and so on, he just has sexual intercourse with his wife. That is, he should not have sexual intercourse with his wife like an animal. But rather, there should be between them a messenger. So there should be a messenger between them. It was said, or it was asked, that what is the messenger, Ya Rasulullah? So the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied by saying kissing and words. Imam Ghazali rahmatullahi has mentioned this hadith in his Ihya Ulumuddin, and similarly Imam Daylami rahmatullahi in his Musnadul Firdaus. Now, very briefly, I'm just going to mention some acts of foreplay, that what kind of things consist of foreplay. Number one, the first thing of foreplay is kissing. That kissing is an important way to show your love to your wife. And kissing is something which is allowed in Islam, and not only is it allowed, but it is also a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there are many hadiths in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kissed his wives, kissed his azwaj. In particular, he kissed Hazrat Aisha radhiyallahu anha. These are mentioned in many hadiths. And on top of that, kissing such as French kissing is also allowed in Islam. Some people think that French kissing is a practice of the disbelievers. However, there is a hadith of Sunan Abu Dawood in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam kissed his wife and he would suck her tongue. I'll mention the hadith in a second, but the main thing which I'm trying to say is that normal kissing is allowed, and similarly French kissing, where you are sucking the tongue of your wife or exchanging the saliva of your wife, then this is something which is allowed, and this is something which is permissible in Islam. And the hadith with regards to French kissing is a hadith of Sunan Abu Dawood, where it's narrated by Sayyidah Aisha anha, كأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يقبلها وهو صائم, that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would kiss her whilst in the state of fasting. وَيَمُصُّ لِسَانَهَا, and he would, i.e. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would suck her tongue. So from this we can understand and deduce that French kissing is something which is permissible and something which is allowed in Islam. Now, when we have established that kissing is allowed, then other things such as licking your wife and fondling your wife's body parts is also permissible as well. And it is also permissible that the kissing is not just restricted to her cheeks or to her lips or forehead or anything like that. You can kiss the whole body of your wife. Like, for example, it is permissible and allowed for a husband to kiss his wife's forearm, to kiss his wife's stomach, her breast, her thighs, and all these kind of stuff. Then all these things are permissible and allowed in Islam. Whether he is allowed to kiss her private parts or not, this is something which we're going to look at later when we look at the issue of oral sex. But just for the time being, just understand that it is permissible for the husband to kiss all the body of the wife, her breast, her arms, her neck and everything, all these things are permissible and allowed in Islam. And as I've just mentioned as well, that he's also allowed to lick those parts as well. Now instead of kissing, if he wants to lick his wife's breast, or if he wants to lick his wife's stomach or her back or anything like that, her feet, then all these things are permissible and allowed in Islam. And similarly, fondling those kind of things is also permissible and allowed in Islam. However, one thing should be remembered here, and that is that even though it is permissible for the husband to kiss his wife's breast, to lick his wife's breast, or to, for example, kiss his wife's nipples and all this kind of stuff, or suck his wife's nipples, these things are permissible. However, care should be taken that he doesn't suck his wife's milk. If he does, then it is haram and impermissible for him to do that. However, the marriage and the nikah will not break. Okay, so the nikah and the marriage will not break. However, if he does do it, and if he happens to swallow his wife's milk, then that is considered haram, and it will be necessary before he swallows it that he spits it out straight away. So the masla is that it is permissible for him to, for example, suck on his wife's nipples and all this kind of stuff. However, he should make sure and care should be taken that he doesn't swallow his wife's milk. So that is the first ruling with regards to foreplay, and that is that kissing, all types of kissing, is allowed with his wife. The second part of foreplay includes massaging and caressing. Now, it is permissible for the man to touch every single part of his wife's body. And similarly, it is also permissible for the wife to touch every single part of her husband's body. There is nothing wrong in the husband stroking, touching, fondling his wife's private parts. Now, there is nothing wrong in the husband touching his wife's vagina, or, for example, inserting his fingers inside his wife's vagina. All these things are permissible and allowed. Similarly, it is also permissible for the wife to stroke her husband's penis, or, for example, to fondle her husband's private parts. All these things are permissible and all these things are allowed. It is mentioned in Fatah Hindiya that Imam Abu Yusuf rahmatullah alayh, who is the student of Imam Hanifa rahmatullah alayh, asked Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh that is there anything wrong in a man touching his wife's vagina and the wife touching her husband's penis? Upon which Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayh replied that no, and he also said that if they are doing it with the intention of foreplay, with the intention of pleasing their partners, then they, inshallah, they will even be rewarding this. So from this we can understand that touching your wife, all her body, and caressing those parts of her body is permissible. Similarly to... So the conclusion is that it is permissible for the husband to touch and stroke and to fondle all the parts of his wife, in particular her genitals, her private parts. To insert his fingers is also permissible, and similarly it's also permissible for the wife to stroke and to touch her husband's private parts, and it's also allowed and it's also permissible for the wife to masturbate her husband. Now, as I mentioned before, that for the husband to masturbate himself, then that is obviously clearly haram, something which is impermissible in Islam. However, for the wife to masturbate her husband, then that is something which is allowed in Islam. In Imdadul Muftiyin, Mufti Taqi Usmani has said that it's best to avoid it, meaning that without any reason, it's best to avoid it, and ejaculation should happen with the husband penetrating into his wife's vagina, and then he reaches ejaculation or orgasm through that way, then that is more preferable. However, However, if, for example, if the wife is in her period and so on, then obviously it will be permissible for the wife to masturbate her husband. So the conclusion is that it is permissible, however, it's best to avoid, and the husband, he reaches ejaculation or orgasm by penetrating through his wife's vagina and not through, like, for example, masturbation. Some other parts of foreplay very quickly. The first masla is with regards to whether it is permissible for the husband to see his wife's private parts and similarly vice versa. Now the masla is that it is permissible for the husband to see his wife's private parts and similarly for the wife to view and see her husband's private parts. However, it's against modesty and haya to do this, and this can be substantiated from a hadith of Sunan ibn Majah where Sayyidah Aisha anha relates to have said, "Ma ra'aytu farja Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam," that I didn't see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's private parts qattu ever. That during my time with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I never saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam private parts. So from this we can understand that it is permissible, however preferable not to, because it is against haya and modesty. Other types of foreplay, some people ask, is whether sex toys are permissible or not. Sex toys include vibrators, lotions and those kind of things, that whether they are allowed in Islam or not. Now the masla or the ruling is that if a sex toy fits the following 4 conditions or the following 4 guidelines, then it will be permissible to use. What are those 4 guidelines or conditions? Number 1 is that it shouldn't harm yourselves. Like the vibrator or something, it shouldn't be something like sharp where it can harm your wife or it can harm the husband. So that is the first condition. The second condition is that the sex toy shouldn't have a figure. It shouldn't be like a tasweer, like a figure, like an image. Because figures and image is something which is not allowed and something which is haram in Islam. So that is the second condition. The third condition is that it can't be used by the spouse themselves, or by the husband himself, or by the wife herself. Meaning, like, if there is a vibrator, then the wife is not allowed to use it upon herself, meaning that the husband will have to do it for her. Because if she is using it by herself, then that would come under the ruling of masturbation. And the fourth condition is that it is not allowed or it is impermissible for the husband to insert the vibrator right inside the vagina of his wife. Meaning that he can rub it on the outside of her vagina. However, for him to put it right inside her vagina so that she is experiencing some kind of desire and shahwa, then that is something which would not be allowed, and that is something which is impermissible in Islam. Even though it is permissible to use, however, scholars have said that it's best to avoid. And the reason why is that the main part of the sexual intercourse and sexual intimacy is the bonding between the husband and wife. Is that the husband, he uses his own private part, his own penis, and he penetrates into his wife's vagina, and there is this kind of bond there. And obviously if you're going to use sex toys and so on, then that bonding between the husband and wife, that would be omitted or that would be missed. So therefore, even though it's permissible to use, however, it's best to avoid. Another type of foreplay is with regards to flogging. Or nowadays you have people who practice sadomasochism, where they will tie up their wife and then they will spank her, they will whip her and all this kind of stuff. They will use belts to hit her. So whether they are allowed or not. So the masla is that flogging is something which is not allowed, something which is impermissible. And obviously the hadiths which I mentioned before, with regards to abusing or hitting your wife, then the same hadiths can be used here, that it is against fitrah, it is against human nature to do those kind of things. So flogging is something which should be avoided and something which is not allowed. The next type of foreplay is with regards to dancing. Now, whether the wife can dance for her husband as part of the foreplay, that whether the wife can dance for her husband or not. Now, the masla or the ruling is that if the wife is dancing to some music, then that is something which is not allowed in Islam, because music is not allowed in Islam. To listen to music is haram. So therefore, as part of the foreplay, if the wife is dancing to some music to her husband, then that would be also impermissible, and that would also be not allowed in Islam. Similarly, if the dancing is associated with the immoral culture or something which is immoral and immodest, such as lap dancing or pole dancing, then that would also be not allowed, and that would also be impermissible in Islam. So for example, if the wife is lap dancing for her husband or pole dancing for her husband, copying the immoral culture of the people outside, then that is something which is unlawful and impermissible in Islam. The third situation is a kind of innocent type of dancing, where the wife is just kind of swaying her body to one side to another, just a bit of harmless kind of innocent dancing. Then the masla, the ruling is that it will be permissible as long as the wife does it for her husband with the intention to please him, then it will be allowed and it will be permissible. The next type of foreplay is called cross-dressing. That whether the husband can dress up like a woman and the woman dress up like a man. And some people, they do that, and sometimes the husband, he likes his wife to be dressed up like a man, and he gets some kind of sexual pleasure through this. Now the masla, very straightforward in Islam, is that cross-dressing is not allowed in Islam. It's not a kind of foreplay which is allowed in Islam. And there are many hadiths which I mentioned before, in particular in the Tafsir classes, where there is a hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's curse is upon those men who imitate women and those women who imitate men. So therefore, cross-dressing is not allowed in Islam. And the last part of the foreplay is pornography. Again, some couples, they ask that whether we are allowed to view or see some pornographic material before we get intimate ourselves. So the simple answer is that no, that it is impermissible and it is unlawful for Muslim men and for Muslim women, or just for the husband himself or just for the wife herself, to view pornographic material before they get intimate. That is something which is not allowed, and that is something which is impermissible in Islam. That is very immodest, very immoral for a Muslim couple to see other people having sex, other people having sexual intercourse, and then for them to carry out those kind of acts in their bedroom, then that is something which is impermissible, and that is something which is not allowed in Islam. Now, if we have a look at the course book, the last paragraph I just mentioned that it is necessary that the husband and wife, they have sexual intercourse in such a room or in such a place where no one can see them. That the doors have to be locked, even though there's no one at home. Even then it's preferable that the doors are locked and it's properly closed, even though it may be at night, but even then it's still preferable that the curtains are drawn and no one can see anything before you engage in sexual intercourse. Which takes me on to another masla here, and that is that whether it is permissible to have a threesome or to have a group sex. Now the way this will work is that a Muslim husband, he may have two wives. So the question is that whether it is permissible for him to have sex with both of his wives at once, or to have sex with one of his wives and then the other wife seeing them doing those kind of things. Now, the masla very simply will be that no. Even though that the woman, the second woman, it's his second wife, and obviously it's permissible for him, or the woman is halal for him. However, it's not permissible for the husband to engage in sexual intercourse with both of them at the same time, or in a situation where he's having sexual intercourse with one of them and the other one is viewing, and that is something which is not allowed, and that is something which is impermissible in Islam. Now, the next section which we're going to look at is with regards to the positions. Now, what kind of position is permissible to have sex in? Now, the principle is deduced from the verse of the Holy Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, Nisa'ukum harthul lakum fa'atu harthakum anna shi'tum. That your wives are plantation for you. So therefore approach or come to your plantation anna shi'tum, from where you wish. So from this we can understand that whichever position the husband and wife are comfortable in, as long as the husband is penetrating into his wife's vagina, then that particular position will be permissible, and that particular position will be allowed in Islam. Now, in the course book I've just mentioned 5 positions. Like number 1, the man on top, that the man, he has sexual intercourse with his wife with the man on top, so that is something which is allowed. Number 2, the rear entry position, and that is similar to the hadith I mentioned of Sunan Tirmidhi of Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab radhiyallahu anhu, that the husband is approaching his wife, he is penetrating into his wife's vagina, but he's approaching her from her back. So again, that is also permissible. Similarly, the side-by-side position, where the spouses, they lie on their sides facing each other, or they lie on their sides and the husband enters the vagina from behind. All these things, that particular position is also allowed. Similarly, the standing position, that the husband can have sexual intercourse with his wife and they are both standing. So the masla is that it is permissible. However, some scholars have said that it is preferable that they do not do it regularly, because as it may be harmful medically, but just here and there, or sometimes if the husband or wife they want, one of them can be standing and the husband can penetrate into his wife's vagina, that is also allowed. And the 5th position is that the woman on top position, that you have a situation where the woman is on top of the husband and he's engaging sexual intercourse. The conclusion to that, it is permissible for a woman to be on top of her husband whilst they are engaging in sexual intercourse. Now, the next part we're going to look at is some prohibited and some unlawful positions. Now, if you have a look at the handouts which I gave you, the first prohibited or the first unlawful position is called anal sex. That it is haram and unlawful for a husband to approach his wife from her anus. And this is mentioned in many hadiths, and particularly the hadith of Sunnah Abu Dawood, where the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Mal'unun man ata imra'atahu fi duburiha." That accursed is that person who approaches his wife from her back. Man ata imra'atahu fi duburiha. Now, the masla with regards to anal sex is that the penetration into the anus, or the inserting of his fingers into the anus, that is haram, that is unlawful. However, it is permissible for the husband to touch the surrounding area of the anus. For example, if he wants to kiss the surrounding area of the anus, or like for example his wife's buttocks, if he wants to kiss that, or if he wants to even touch that, or even if he wants to rub his penis on those particular parts, then they are permissible and that is allowed. The only thing which is haram, and that is the actual penetration into the anus, the actual inserting something into the anus, that is unlawful, that is haram. However, if he wants to kiss that, surrounding area, or even if he wants to rub his penis onto that surrounding area, then that is something which is allowed, and that is something which is permissible. The next prohibited position is oral sex. Now, oral sex should be, or they are like different situations, and this is a very common question which people and brothers ask, that whether this kind of sex is permissible or not. Now, the masla with regards to oral sex is that it depends on the situation. Now, there are two situations. The first situation is that if the man, if he puts or inserts his penis into the woman's mouth to the extent that the woman swallows the filth and the semen, the money and so on, then that is something which is impermissible and something which is unlawful. And this is mentioned in Fatah Rahimiyya and also in Fatah Hindiya, that it is impermissible for the husband to insert his penis into his wife's mouth to the extent that she is sucking and she is swallowing the semen, and that is something which is unlawful in Islam. The second situation is that if the act consists of the wife kissing her husband's penis, or the husband kissing her genitals, and they avoid any areas where there is pre-ejaculatory fluid. Meaning, like for example, just say if the husband is wearing a condom and the wife just kisses the his private part, she doesn't actually suck is not actually sucking his penis, but he's just like kissing the outer parts of it, and similarly that's what the husband is doing with her private part. Then as long as semen is not being swallowed, or as long as as long as they avoid the pre-ejaculatory fluid, then some scholars have said that this will be permissible, i.e. mubah, although other scholars have disliked such a thing. So the second situation, the conclusion we can come to is that if, for example, the oral sex consists of the wife not sucking her husband's penis, or similarly the husband not sucking his wife's vagina or anything around that, but he's just like kissing around the area, then some scholars have said it is permissible. However, others have still considered it makruh and disliked. So therefore the safest opinion will be that we avoid such acts. Now, after the sex, the next section is with regards to afterplay. And in afterplay, it's necessary that after the husband and wife have engaged in sexual intercourse, that they are affectionate with each other. Now, it's not though, like for example, the husband, he just quickly has sexual intercourse with his wife and then he leaves his wife and he goes for a shower. But it's also important that he's affectionate with her, and he kisses her, he cuddles with her and so on, and then after a while they go for a bath and so on. Okay, and it's also necessary that after they've engaged in after play, that they go for a bath, because as soon as semen is ejaculated, ghusl becomes first. So it's very important that, and it's first that they go for a bath afterwards. And another masla here is that if a person wants to re-engage in sexual intercourse with his wife, like for example, he's already had sex with his wife once, can he have another sex straight away? So the masla is that it is mustahab that he has a ghusl, that he has a bath, he takes a bath, and then after that he engages in sexual intercourse. If he doesn't do that, then the next thing is that at least he does wuzu and then he engages in sexual intercourse. If he can't even do that, then at least he should wash his private parts and then engage in sexual intercourse. So that is a masla, that if a person wants to re-engage in sexual intercourse, then it is not necessary to have a bath in between. And the reason why is that is mentioned in a hadith of Sahih al-Muslim, Sunan al-Tirmidhi and Sunan Abu Dawood, narrated by Sayyidina Anas radhiyallahu anhu, that anna an-nabiy sallallahu alayhi wa sallam kana yatufu ala nisa'ihi bi ghuslin wahid. That the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would sleep or would engage in sexual intercourse with all his wives, bi ghuslin wahidin, with one ghusl, meaning that however many wives Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam engaged sexual intercourse with, he only did one ghusl, or he only had one ritual bath afterwards. Just one final masla with regards to afterplay, and this you could say is also part of the foreplay, and that is that whether it is permissible for a husband to shower with his wife. So the masla is that yes, it is permissible. Like, it is something permissible for the husband to shower or to have a bath with his wife, and this is substantiated from a hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari narrated by Sayyidah Aisha radhiyallahu anha, in which she says, Kuntu aghtasilu ana wa Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam min ina'in wahidin, that I and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had a ghusl and had a bath from one particular pot. So from this we can understand that it is permissible for the husband and wife to shower with each other. The next section which we are going to start is with regards to abortion, contraception, and other forms of a woman getting pregnant, such as IVF treatment and so on. Now I'm going to start off with abortion. Now abortion is something which is, there's differences of situation, and according to the different situation and different scenario, you will find the different or that particular rule. Now according to the Sharia, the ruh or the soul enters the body 120 days from the day the woman is conceived. So just as an example, if a woman is conceived on the 1st of January, then 120 days after, the soul and the ruh enters the body. And that is mentioned in many hadiths of Sahih al-Bukhari and Sunan ibn Majah, where it's narrated from Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud radhiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that the seed of one of you remains in the womb of the mother for 40 days, in the form of a nutfah. Then it remains like a clot for another 40 days, and then for the same number of days like a lump of flesh. And then after that, the ruh and the soul is put in, or is entered into the body. Now, to have an abortion after 120 days is haram. And those who have an abortion after 120 days, then it is considered as they have killed a child. And the same ruling of killing a child applies for having abortion of a child after 120 days. And the ruling will still remain the same, even though the child might be born with some kind of disability or with some genetic diseases, the ruling will remain the same. Now, before 120 days, the jurists or some jurists have given permission in extreme circumstances to abort the child prior to 120 days. Like, for example, if the mother's life or health is in danger, or the woman has become pregnant due to rape or fornication, then before 120 days, some scholars and some jurists have given leeway, have given permission in extreme circumstances. So that is the ruling with regards to abortion. The next section is with regards to contraception. Now, what does Islam say with regards to contraception? Now, there are two types of contraception. One is a permanent irreversible contraception, which includes the castration of men, which includes taking out or to carry out such operations such as vasectomy and tubectomy, which takes out the possibility or the capability of a man having, or the man delivering sperm or semen to make his wife pregnant, or the woman having a tubectomy which completely eradicates her of ever having children in their life. Now, with regards to permanent irreversible contraception, the masla or the ruling is that it is unlawful and haram in Islam. To carry out such operations is something which is unlawful and haram in Islam. And there is a hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari where some companions, they asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when we go for battles, when we go for expeditions, then our wives do not accompany us. So can we castrate ourselves? The Sahaba asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, can we castrate ourselves? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied by saying that no, you are not allowed. So that is the first form of contraception, where it's a permanent, irreversible contraception. And the second one is considered, or is classified as a temporary, reversible contraception, which includes like the withdrawal method known as azal, or the using of morning after pills, or the using of condoms and so on. Now, with regards to the second type of contraception, the scholars have written that without any reason, it is makruh tanzihi. That to do without any reason, it is makruh tanzihi. However, if there are some reasons, or if there are some situations or some kind of excuses, then it is permissible without any detestability. And what are the situations, or what are the reasons? For example, the physical state of the woman. If the woman is very, very weak, that if she has children, then it may affect her health. Then in that situation, it will be permissible to have sex with protection, with condoms and so on, or for the wife to use morning after pill or anything like that. The second situation is weakness and illness. The third situation is that if the couple are on a distant journey. The fourth situation is that the couple's relationship is unstable and divorce is likely, or like, for example, spacing out children in order to give them adequate care and attention. Then all these things, in these kind of situations, to carry out contraception will be something which is permissible and allowed in Islam. Very quickly, the last situation is with regards to infertility treatment, and the masla or the ruling which the scholars have written is that if the infertility treatment entails a person to use another woman's egg, or entails the woman to use another man's sperm, then that is haram and that is unlawful. And it's mentioned in a hadith of Sunan Tirmidhi, where the Prophet ﷺ has said that it is haram and lawful for a man to water another man's plantation. So therefore, the masla with regards to infertility treatment is that firstly, you should try and supplicate to Allah, ask Him for children and so on. But after many years of trying, 10, 15, 20 years of trying, and if the couple really want children, then it will be permissible with the condition that there should be no third party involvement in regards to the sperm or the eggs. So that concludes the course. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to act upon what's been said. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the course. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the efforts of the brothers who set up this course. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.